Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Odin's movie blog. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and today I'm going to be giving me review on the movie by Martin Scorsese, The Irishman, which is finally out on Netflix. It has been out in certain markets at a very limited basis, and I was very sad that the film never actually came to my market here in Chattanooga, or at least anywhere nearby in a wider scale. I know there have been some press screenings to it, but I'm not initially invited to those screenings. I usually am able to tag along with a friend of mine, but usually I'm not invited myself. It'd be really cool to be invited to those events, but obviously I'm not going to shill in order to get access to those events, so we'll see what happens. But let's talk about the actual film itself. Well, first off, it's 3.5 hours long. And it is definitely 3.5 hours long. There's been some people that try to say that you don't really feel the time. I think that you do feel the time. However, I think that it's time well spent. If there's one thing I can say about this film is not only is it long, it's an epic. It really is an epic crime drama. Only that's, a movie so much that only Scorsese could actually pull it off. I think that a lot of directors out there who might try to make this type of film would be a film that would be a straight to HBO or straight to streaming service movie that some people would see, some people wouldn't see, but really wouldn't have anything all that special to it. You add Martin Scorsese to that mix, and all the actors he's able to bring in and all the performances he's able to get out of those actors, and you have something incredibly special. And that's exactly what The Irishman is. It's a long, great, epic film, biography slightly. It's always interesting whenever you have biography in the description because it's always going to be that case of how much of this is true, how much of this is elaborated, how much of this is even possibly made up. But you kind of forget about all of those things because of the amount of star power. I don't know what's going on with my accent today. The amount of star power that you have on screen. And so you have Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, Joe Pesci, Harvey Keitel in a, I think, too limited role. I wish that the role that Harvey Keitel had was a little bit more, but obviously he's a guy that's friends with Scorsese. He's a guy that's probably going to be willing to do any role that is given to him. And so he has the role that's only on screen for, minutes. In a movie that's over 3.5 hours long, he's only on screen for 2 minutes, and he only has so many lines too in the time he's even on screen. In fact, I can't even remember that many lines that he actually says. I want to say there's one scene where he actually speaks, but that's pretty much it. And when you have a film that long, it's really sad that Harvey Keitel wasn't given a little bit more to do. Ray Romano, who plays a lawyer in this film, is freaking fantastic. I mean, Ray Romano shows himself to be a very talented dramatic actor when he's given the ability to do so, and I have a feeling the direction of Scorsese probably helped with that. Bobby Cannavale, who I personally really enjoy a lot. Anna Paquin has a supporting role here as his daughter, as one of Robert De Niro's daughters, and you have a bunch of other people in here. Jesse Plemons, who is someone that I personally love a lot. If anyone's ever seen Game Night, you'll recognize this guy right here. If you haven't seen Game Night, I highly recommend it because his role is probably one of the funniest roles in that film. No, it definitely is the funniest role in that film, and it's one of my favorite comedic roles of the past several years. It's just that damn special. So you've got an all-star cast in this film. And obviously, the biggest elephant in the room is not just the time, it's also the fact that it has been released on Netflix. And there's some people saying to themselves, is this film going to be able to pick up any awards? Is it going to be able to pick up any type of traction among the awards circuit? Now, people like me don't really care about that kind of stuff because the awards, especially the Oscars and all those other places, have just really become jokes. They've really exposed themselves as the political campaigns that they have been for a very long time, but now it's just becoming so much more to the forefront where people can just easily predict every single award that goes out, or at least the vast majority of awards that go out, and so there really isn't anything special to them anymore. It's like, oh, so this is the film that happens to check off all of the identitarian boxes this year, and so therefore that's how it's going to go. And sadly, because The Irishman is a Netflix movie, and there is still a lot of animosity towards that streaming service among Hollywood elites, this film is likely going to be shut out in a lot of different areas. Now, could it still get some nominations? I think Scorsese still has a lot of power and a lot of influence in Hollywood, but I think that it could be definitely negatively impacted by it being on Netflix. Now, going to comments that Scorsese made earlier this year when he was talking about Marvel films, saying they're more like theme parks. There's really not a lot of substance to them, but they're fun and a lot of people enjoy them, but they weren't actual cinematic films, right? So obviously, let's just get this out of the way. Those movies are films. Right? Films are movies. The difference, I think, between what he's trying to argue between film and cinema is that film or movies is any old thing that gets recorded, edited, put together by countless numbers of people, countless numbers of talented people, even at that. Even some of the worst films that have ever been made for Marvel still have some very talented people behind the camera, working lights, working cinematography, working visual effects, working countless hours and hours on end, probably for very little pay compared to the, the idiots that are being shown on screen in most of the cases, who just can't, stop talking when they're off the screen. But they are still well made. There's still a lot of people that put a lot of effort into those films. And he's not trying to tear those down. What he's trying to point out is that films like The Irishman can only really now in today's world exist on Netflix. It's very hard for studios nowadays to pick up films like this and say, oh yeah, we want to put our money behind a 3.5 hour, keep this in mind, put our money behind a 3.5 hour biography crime drama. Even though Martin Scorsese's name's attached to it, even though you've got Joe Pesci, even though you've got Al Pacino, even though you got Robert De Niro, even though you got these giant titans of the film industry behind it, they know that 3.5 hour crime drama does not sell tickets at the movie theater, does not make the big box office receipts. And so they're not going to be willing to back these types of projects. And so what Scorsese's pointing out, and really is showing with this film, is that no, there is still a path, there is still a place for these cinematic experiences. I love the fact that this film exists, because there's going to come a time in which I honestly believe where films like this are going to become even more rare than they are now. They're already pretty rare. You don't really have a lot of Irishmans coming out. You don't really have any of these meticulous, and there's been some great behind-the-scenes footage where Scorsese in his director's chair, there's one of him with headphones on. He's looking at the screen being played back on screen, and it's almost like he's conducting the scene, and he goes, perfect. And it's just one of those moments where you think to yourself, wow, that's a filmmaker. That's someone that has a vision. That's someone that knows exactly what he's doing at every moment of the day. That's not just someone that's randomly, churning out movie after movie after movie every year or every 2 years. He is one of the best minds, one of the best film minds that currently exist in Hollywood today, and one of the greatest of all time still working today in Hollywood. So this film is fantastic. Is it slow at times? Yes. The pacing, I think, is definitely noticeable from time to time, because it is 3.5 hours, and it's very hard to keep a film moving and moving and moving when it is that long. But Scorsese is a master at his craft, and so he makes it pretty enjoyable for the most part. There's only a couple of times where I had to pause it so that way I could take a break, or points where I even felt like I could pause it to take a break, because it does move along for most of the time. Not all the time, but for most of the time. So it is not a perfect film, but it's a damn good one. And it's one that I think is worth seeing, specifically for the performances of De Niro, Pacino, Pesci, and dear Lord, man, I just, I forgot how amazing Al Pacino can really be in a movie until I saw this. And so he plays Jimmy Hoffa in this film, and it's him being the best that he can be. It's all of the actors on screen basically giving the very best performance that they possibly can get. And it's amazing. It's fantastic. Scorsese does, once again, another great job directing another great film. And the guy's getting up there in years. I don't know how many more movies he has in him, especially since he's not just pumping them out willy-nilly. He's taking his time, and he's taking his time and attention, just like with, Tarantino. Tarantino has only made so many films. Scorsese's been around so long. That's why his library is so vast, because he's been around for so long. If you had the same amount of time for Tarantino, you'd probably see a similar number of films, even though Tarantino has been very clear, I only want to make a certain number of films in my lifetime as a director. We'll see if he stays that number or if we see some changing. But with films that these two guys are putting out, Scorsese, Tarantino, Christopher Nolan, I put in that list as well. I'm sure there's others too. Denis Villeneuve is another person that I put in there as well. I think that it goes to show you that there is a place, and I'm hoping that there's success enough on Netflix. There's people maybe buying subscriptions to Netflix, because obviously I have my own personal issues with Netflix and all the crap that they've done. For example, saying, oh, we're going to boycott a state because they're supporting life and all this other nonsense. And I know that there's reasons to be critical of Netflix, as I am, but I have to give credit where credit is due. And the fact that they would be willing to finance and put their money behind a vision by Martin Scorsese, and obviously he's a guy that wants it to be put in theaters. Scorsese wanted this movie to be shown in the theater. This is where it's meant to be seen. He is a cinematic dude. He understands it. He says, I don't want people watching my film on a phone, but if that's what I have to do to get the film made, then I'm going to do it. So if anything, I have to give credit to them, because no other studio would be willing to get the money behind the project that he would need in order to get this thing going. And I'm really hoping that this film is able to get some type of tangible success, so that way we can get more films like it. But overall, I'm going to give this film a solid A. I really am. It's a fantastic film. It's one that I think is definitely one of the best films of the year. Is it going to be in my top 5? It's a very good chance. It's a very strong chance that it'll be up there. There are some other films that I think are slightly more rewatchable, and that's the biggest issue that this film has, is that it doesn't have that same rewatchability that other films have. It's a great film. It kind of reminds me a lot of my review for Ford v Ferrari, where it's a great film, but I don't really feel the need to watch it again. I think this film is slightly more rewatchable only because of the performances, not because of the story or all the other elements that go into the filmmaking, because if I focus just on those elements, Ford v Ferrari is more rewatchable. But if I focus on the acting and all of the craft behind everything, this film will get it. One small gripe that I have with the film, and that's where I wanted to put my grade out there and all my good positive thoughts and negative thoughts from a more objective standpoint. This is where it becomes a little bit more subjective, is that there are a couple of priests who are actual real-life priests featured in this film, and both of them are part of the modernist bent currently going on in the church. And it kind of just frustrated me because Scorsese is obviously known for having a faith background, for having been raised Catholic, and a lot of those themes have always pervaded his films. And obviously he's bringing these two priests in because both of them are major personalities. One of them is featured on Fox News all the time, or at least was featured on Fox News all the time. And then the other is in the news every other day because he is constantly questioning church teaching. And that's, of course, Father James Martin. And if you're a Catholic, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So he's in this movie, and he's the one I'm more critical of because he is an older priest, pre-Vatican II in the film, and he's saying Latin. He's saying a baptismal rite, the traditional rite in Latin. And he sounds so uncomfortable saying it because this is about as modernist as you can get. I honestly didn't believe that he knew what he was saying. I honestly thought, okay, so they basically called him in, gave him saying, oh, by the way, this is what the old rite used to be. You may not know that because you don't care about tradition. You don't care about the church teaching, so why would you know anything about this? And so therefore, let's go ahead and put it in front of your face, and then you'll just read it off and pretend like you know Latin. And even as someone that's not a Latin expert by any means, I was listening to him say, oh my gosh, he sounds so unnatural with it. I know that's a nitpick, but it's one that bothers me tremendously because if you're going to have people representing the faith on screen and you're going to use actual priests, use ones that are actually in line with church teaching and not just, spouting off some nonsense like they are on a daily basis. That would be freaking great. So anyway, nitpick aside though, it's a great film. That's why I gave it a solid A and put all that other stuff behind it because I thought it was important. But anyway, also I just wanted to give you an update about things that I've been doing behind the scenes. So I've actually recently found, thanks to Trey Chester, shout out to you, good sir, this new version of Star Wars. It's a Star Wars restoration project that was started by Team -1. And they put out a couple of different versions, actually like 3 or 4 different versions of the original Star Wars prints because they found original 35mm, 8mm, 16mm, and I think even 70mm prints of the film unaltered prior to George Lucas coming in and just destroying the cuts and saying to himself, these are the only cuts that matter, and I don't want to preserve the original. They are preserving it. They have found it. They're color correcting, and they're doing these scans. And so just to show you what I have so far, I've been burning a lot the last couple of days. So I have the silver screen edition of the original Star Wars film. So this is like the first project they started that really got them attention, which eventually led to the projects are known as 4K 77, 4K 80, 4K 83. Standing for each of the films. So they actually have 4K renders of 2 of the films right now, the original Star Wars and also Return of the Jedi. They don't have Empire yet because there's a lot of problems with the prints they have. It's also something they're doing on their own. No one's paying them. Obviously, the studios don't want them doing this, so it's all out of their own dime. But the fact they're able to do these quality prints at significantly less money is just amazing to me, and it really gives no excuse for Hollywood to be holding back on the original Star Wars prints like they have been doing for several years. If these fans can do it with so much less technology and so much less money, there's no reason why a multi-billion-dollar corporation cannot do the same. But I also have the actual these are the 2K prints, so it's the 4K prints sampled down to 2K resolution, so a regular Blu-ray disc. I don't have the ability to put any movies onto a 4K disc yet because that's still relatively new technology as far as burning goes, and obviously that's going to cost a little bit more money, but I do have my Blu-ray burner and my Blu-rays, and so I was able to get these. So I have, of course, Star Wars 1977, so the only difference between that is this is the first project they did from one film print, and so there's some grain left on it, which I love. As a film nerd, I'm like, oh, I get to see the film grain on it. That's really cool, but it has been color corrected, so it's not exactly that film grain. This one is the high quality version because they've had access since they started that project to more cuts of the film. and higher quality cuts of the film. And so they were able to make this. So this is the 2K render of their 4K project. I also, because there is no Empire Strikes Back edition yet, I have what's called the Renegade Grindhouse edition, which to me just sounds badass, and I love the cover for it. So these are all just printed on, printer paper. I want to find a way to, and if anyone has any recommendations, please let me know in the comments section of getting actual printer and poster paper, so that way I can get like legitimate cover art. And if anyone can find out the best way to print out art for the actual disc itself, I would love to get that too, because I would love to have like an official looking set of these movies. But anyway, I got the Renegade Grindhouse edition of Empire Strikes Back. This is basically the 4K scan. What they did was they scanned the film reel at 4K resolution, and that is just the image itself. So they haven't gone in post to change the color and to take away grain and to do noise reduction, things like that. And so this version is the actual print itself of Empire Strikes Back. And so I get to see what Empire would look like if they were to show that reel to an audience today. And I just think that's really cool. So it's very dirty, very grainy, but there's something cool about that. And so as a collector, I'm like, yes, this is the kind of copy that I want. Return of the Jedi, this is the 2K resolution of the 4K cut of Return of the Jedi. And then I also have the Return of the Jedi. This is the Grindhouse version of Return of the Jedi. So again, I don't have an image for it because they didn't have any cover art for this version. And there also were some issues because it was the MKV file, and I didn't know how to turn that into a Blu-ray file. I transitioned it to an image to burn onto the Blu-ray, but because I didn't have menus attached to it, it plays on this, but I have to go in and it's this whole thing. It still works, but I'm still working on it. That's why I have issues written on that copy, and hopefully I can find some cover art for that as well. But anyway, just wanted to add that too, because I think it's something that's interesting. It's a passion project of mine to start searching for all of these different editions. I already have the Harmy's Despecialized editions, which are all really cool. If anyone wants to know the difference between the two, I know I'm going kind of long here, but for any Star Wars nerds out there, you might be like, oh, this is interesting stuff. So basically, the Harmy's Despecialized editions took different cuts of the film and put them all together. So someone went in and like cut certain parts of a frame and put them in, and then removed certain parts of it. So took away the CGI elements that George Lucas added in, but maybe had a still image, like a high quality still image of one scene, put that there, and then cut around it. Like really insane stuff, meticulous stuff that probably took years of them to actually do it. And so basically it's this cut and paste process, color correct, and then you have the Harmy's Despecialized edition. The difference between that and the ones that I have here, these are all 4K scans of actual film prints that they're then adding together and color correcting. And so basically think of this as being a little bit more film, more like a film nerd side of it, where it's again a little bit more gritty, a little bit more dark, and just I think kind of like a cooler process, because you're taking actual film prints and film reels and recording them on your own without any high-tech recording technology, and you're still able to get the quality. Because I've been able to look at them, and the quality on them, even on the Grindhouse versions, are really cool looking. Like they have the film grain and it's dirty, but it's a high-quality resolution render of the film. The cleaner ones for Star Wars and Return of the Jedi look freaking spectacular. Now, if I had to recommend either one or the other, I'd probably recommend Harmy's, because you have the full set, and they're all high quality. They're all the same quality. They're all put together in a Blu-ray menu so once you have access to the file, you can burn it onto a Blu-ray, and then it's there for you forever. Where the other ones, it takes just a little bit more, I would say, the fact that you don't have all three of them fully. You have 2 out of the 3, which is still pretty good, but there's just so many more copies available of the film that include, I think there's even a black and white version that they found that they have 7 minutes of, and it's just, again, cool stuff. I know it's a little bit nerdy, but anyway, I wanted to let y'all know about that. So let me know your thoughts. What are your thoughts about The Irishman? Have you seen it? Is it worth it? Do you think it's a good film? Do you agree with my grade of an A? I did this in the last time I did a movie review. In the eye above my head, you'll see a poll where you can rank the film. If you have seen it, mark it A, B, C, or D, or F. Just let me know what you thought about it, or if you haven't seen it, I have an option for that as well. But also, let me know, have you ever heard of these copies of Star Wars? Please let me know. I know I'll probably get inundated with people saying, where do I find it? Where do I find it? The best thing I can do is try and say, go and just look up Project 4K 80, Project 4K 77 for one, and then of course Harmy's Despecialized edition for the other. You'll be able to find several forums on it. All of them have instructions on how to access it. Harmy's will take you a long time because it's broken up into like 1,000 parts, and it's done because it's not meant for you to get access to a movie for free. It's done for you to get access to the movie if you already own it, because I already do own all of the other films in the current format, the Disney or the George Lucas-fied format. And so these are just newer versions or different versions of films I already own. So it's not just a freebie, which means it's going to take a lot of time and effort. But once you have it all, I can tell you, it is well worth the effort. Anyway, let me know your thoughts about that stuff and all the things we talked about in the comments section below. If you like this video, smash that like button, give me a subscribe. It helps me a lot. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful day. And as always, God bless.